Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our July town hall. We'll give everybody just a few seconds to get in off of out of the lobby. Takes a few seconds for you guys to get in, and then we will start here just in about 2 minutes. All right. Well, you guys, welcome back uh, to our July town hall. We appreciate you joining us. We'll go ahead and get started so that we can maximize your time. We appreciate you joining us. We have a special treat for you today. And before I turn it over to our co-host for today's session, I do want to remind you our rollout tours are starting soon, and you can find all of the information for our rollout tour on our events calendar at nccagent.com. And you can see if there's a city close to you that you'd like to come join us. We'll have carrier partners, we'll have our NCC experts, and it will be a fantastic time. It's going to be seminar style. So we also will have an area where the carriers will have their individual booths set up. So they'll each have a table. You can walk around, you can get one-on-one time with them. They'll also be doing presentations. Each carrier will have their own presentation section. So you'll be able to hear a little bit more about their upcoming plans for the 2025 plan year. But with all of that housekeeping out of the way, oh, actually, one last thing for housekeeping. I will unmute you guys so that all you have to do on your side is just click that little microphone at the bottom. The nature of this topic is probably going to warrant some questions, so feel free to drop them in the chat as well. At the end, though, if you want to come off of mute and ask your question, feel free to do that as well. But with that, Tria, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend.
So what we have here is a collection of final rules that were adopted fairly recently. I do want to caveat that by saying that there is an open lawsuit filed in federal court that's essentially rendering much of these rules mute, but we don't know what that's going to look like. There's a more detailed document that accompanies this presentation, which I'm going to send to you after this meeting, along with this presentation as well. So there are two rules that I want to talk about today, not to get too technical, but one is the 4201 and then 4205. The 4201 was written about 2.5, 3 years ago. CMS kicked the can down the road on a number of provisions, and then they finally finalized that. 2205 was written about 1.5 years ago, and that was recently finalized in late spring of this year. So we're going to go into those rules and talk about what impact you're going to see on your end. Okay, so the final rule is a collection of massive amounts of regulations, most of which do not apply to you. So I only extracted the areas that I was asked to extract that would apply to you. So first off is you get some SNP eligibility verification requirement that is a slight modification from the current requirement. So this is effective Jan 1, 2025. That is the effective date of when it's going to go into effect. And in essence, anytime you're enrolling someone into a CSNP, the carrier has an obligation to contact the beneficiary's current physician, PA, or NP to confirm the qualifying condition that would render them qualify for a CSNP. They can go about in one of two ways. Method one is the carrier can contact the member's healthcare provider directly and obtain that verification prior to the enrollment date. Or number two is they can have the member fill out what's known as the PQAC, which is the pre-enrollment qualification assessment tool before the end of the first month of enrollment in the CSNP. So why is this relevant to you? It's relevant because CMS is trying to crack down on CSNP verification. They're seeing a high number of members enrolling into the CSNP but later having to disenroll them because they simply don't have that chronic condition that would make them eligible. So the carrier more than likely is going to put some work on you as the agent to screen the members or clients and possibly have them fill out this PQOC on your end. Obviously, it's going to vary per carrier, and what that requirement is going to look like is going to be based upon their determination. But just have an awareness that CSNP eligibility is going to be a fairly important thing that all carriers are going to focus on. So there's going to be additional work that I think they're going to expect you to do. Any questions on SNP eligibility? It's a fairly straightforward process, but it's technical and it's lengthy nevertheless, and it does kind of impede upon your ability to just to enroll someone right off the bat. You do have to do some verification. All right, stop me if you have any questions. Next up is TPMO lead source consent. This may not impact you directly, but it impacts the way in which we acquire leads. So this is effective October 1st of this year, coinciding with 2025 AEP. And the rule states that anytime any entity is collecting beneficiary data for the purpose of generating leads to being used later on for sales and marketing purposes, if you're going to take that lead and share it or sell it to another entity, you have to obtain the member's prior written consent before you can do so. So like I said, this is going to be more relevant towards TPMOs and lead gen and lead aggregators that compile leads and send that or sell that to another entity. If you're on the recipient end, then there's nothing for you to do. But at the first level where entities are compiling leads, then they have to comply with this. So they have to obtain prior consent, which includes clear, conspicuous disclosure, stating that your information shall be shared with another entity. You have to list each entity that's going to be buying the data from you and allow the member to either agree to or reject the sharing of their data with each TPMO. Okay. So like I said, if you are the one purchasing the lead or using the lead and you're not the one generating the lead, then this does not apply to you. Any questions so far? Okay. Courtney had asked me to speak briefly about the DSNP SEP that is effective for 2025 AEP. So CMS made a slight tweak in the regulation relative to DSNP. So moving forward, if you are a fully subsidized eligible member or have qualified for other subsidy, then you have a one-time per month election into a standalone PDP. This only applies if they're enrolling into a standalone PDP. It does not apply if they're enrolling into an MA or an MAPD. Okay, so that's critical. And for full benefit dual eligible, they can also make a one-time per month election into a fully integrated DSNP, HIDE, or an integrated or any applicable integrated plan. Those are specialty plans. The FIDEs and the HIDEs, they are official classification from CMS that coordinate benefits with Medicaid and have some passive enrollment as well. And again, both populations, you can only enroll them into a standalone PDP. Okay, so this does not apply to MA or MAPD. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about the administrative aspect, we're going to talk about the compensation bit. And huge disclaimer, okay, the following two slides represent final rule regulations that have been stayed by the court in Texas. And I'm going to give you a very brief background. CMS passed a bunch of regulations that curtail an agent's ability to contract, as well as some compensation changes. Those changes, specifically discussed in the two slides, resulted in a federal lawsuit in Texas and Tampa by AmeriLife and by a couple of entities within the FMO space. The court in Texas has put a court-ordered stay on those two regulations, meaning that right now, that regulation is not effective. They are no good. So what happens is that the previous regulation prior to the final rule, that is going to be effective. The court is going to issue its final decision sometime in January or February of 2025. We expect and we are predicting that it's going to be a favorable outcome in favor of the agent broker community. And we believe that CMS, depending on the election year and who's going to be in the White House, there's a good possibility that CMS under a Democrat administration may not pursue the change in regulation. Under a Republican administration, they may just quash that regulation altogether. Okay. So again, we're not going to know that until January, February of next year. But in the meantime, the following regulations, I'm just simply providing to you for prosthetic reasons only, for educational purposes only. This regulation currently is not valid. So the compensation rule under the final rule states that all admin payments will be counted towards compensation and will be counted towards fair market value. So CMS defines administrative expenses as any fees that a carrier or an FMO would pay you for state appointments, training, certification, testing costs, mileage to and from a member's home or to or from a marketing seminar, your venue, rent, snacks, materials, anything that is spent on related to enrollment and related enrollment activities. Okay. So CMS published an old 2025 fair market value that they did a $100 bump in fair market value to account for the admin fee. That is going away simply because there's a court order stay. So after 2025, the fair market value is going to be calculated by adjusting it based upon the MA growth rate, which typically hovers around 2% to 3%. It's very technical, but for your purpose, just know that particular rule is currently not valid. All right. CMS also made changes to the initial year compensation, which must be paid at fair market value. The previous rule states that you can pay up to fair market value. Now CMS is saying you have to pay at fair market value. Same thing with the renewal. Previous guideline says that it can be paid up to 50%. Now they're just going to impose a 50% rule across the board. Okay. Next is contract prohibition. So under the final rule, CMS has put in some restrictions on the type of contracts that would be prohibited between the carrier down to the FMO, down to the FMO, down to the agent broker. Okay. So in essence, contracts that create an incentive based upon some sort of an enrollment volume would be prohibited. The goal is that they don't want contracts that create some sort of an incentive that would prohibit an agent to objectively place a member in the best plan based upon their health or financial needs. So examples of contracts that CMS would prohibit include any renewal terms that are tied to high rate of enrollment. So as an example, if you've got a carrier contract that says you have to hit a certain volume of enrollment, and if you fail to meet those enrollment volume, then your contract is going to be canceled. That's going to be prohibited under the final rule. Second, any FMO contract with agents or brokers that specified enrollment quotas, so again, that downstream impact, that will be prohibited. Bonuses or additional payments paid to FMOs from the carrier that is passed on to agents that is based on enrollment volume, right? That's prohibited. And then lastly, FMO providing lead sources or other incentives to agents based on reasons other than what is in the best interest of the member. Okay, so these are the contracts that CMS is looking to prohibit. Again, I want to emphasize Every single one of these prohibitions are currently under a court order stay, along with anything that you see in red. All right. So anything with a red border is under a court stay. That is not valid currently. What is valid is the final rule regulation that is currently in effect. Okay, so basically business as usual until you hear from the court sometime in January or February. We are monitoring the court case that's happening in Texas on a daily basis. And when we do get updates, we will issue updates corresponding to that. So in the meantime, business as usual. And if you have any questions, just ping me now or send it through the appropriate channels. Any questions so far?
Hey, Tripp, we did have one that came in regarding the couple slides before where you talking about the D-SNP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is that, let me see exactly how it was phrased here. So your first bullet point there, is that for LIS specifically, or can you clarify the difference of the two?
Yeah, so for the first bullet, it is for your full subsidy. All right. So there are different levels of LIS. It's got to be a full subsidy. It's going to be for the full benefit eligible subsidy. And and I'm sorry, your full benefit and other subsidy eligible. So both full as well as other types of subsidy eligible.
Mhm.
Okay. And then for the second bullet, that's only going to be for your full benefit eligible, and that is going to allow them to enroll in one of these specialty SNPs, your FIDEs, your HIDEs, et cetera.
And
So yeah,
how
CMS is making, so it needs to be once per quarter, per year. They changed that to one time per month.
that was
So
that was the next part of that question is how does that relate to the current quarterly or every 3 month SEP now going to once a month?
yeah, so the quarterly goes away, and now members have the ability to move in and out once a month. Okay. Any other questions?
Guys, feel free. You can come off mute if you want, or you can drop them in the chat. We had one come into the chat. Says, are the insurance companies going to have integrated D-SNP and non-integrated D-SNPs?
That is up to the insurance company. Yeah, we're not going to know what that's going to look like until August, September, when everything is just going to publish.
Hmm.
But integrated D-SNPs are not that common. They are fairly new, so it's really up to the carrier to determine what product they want to sell. So we don't know that until bids are approved officially and numbers are baked in, and carriers have published all of their products, and you can grab them through First Review or through medicare.gov.
I'll throw another plug in for the rollout tours, both for us and as your carriers are having rollout tours, they'll be able to go into more detail than maybe what they share with us. We give them 30, 45 minutes per session at a carrier event that they have the whole day they can go into things. So definitely sign up, attend those. You'll get a lot more information straight from them for sure.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we thank you for your time.
Yep. Guys, we do appreciate your time. If you have any questions afterwards, because sometimes this does happen where you will you'll process things and you'll come up with a question later. Feel free to shoot that over to training@nccagent.com and we'll route that to the appropriate person to get that answer for you. But we do appreciate your time. We thank you for joining us. And if you have any other questions, feel free to send that in, but also check our events calendar, nccagent.com. We have a bunch more webinars that are popping up. Also, our rollout tours are there. So we'd love to see you as we hit the road or on our next webinar. So take care, guys. Have a great day.